Hello everyone, this is Joker and welcome to my channel and another Formula 1 review of the Grand Prix, this time of the Hungaroring. Sorry if this video is a little bit strange because the previous iterations failed to record. I cannot even use any of it. Not that I'm the best at editing, I will try to learn that in the future to make better content, because one page is a little bit boring, I get it. Right, the Hungaroring Grand Prix. What a race it was. What a crazy race it was. It just, wow, so many things to talk about and I will not get to that all. So I'll stick to the most important points. It was a rainy start. I'm not going to say it was a wet race because I don't know if it was qualified as a wet race. And I have a question. If anyone knows, please say put it down in the comments down below. If you use inters and it is not a wet race, does that count as to one of the two compounds? Because I don't know. I think it would count because you drove on a different compound once you switch to medium, hard or soft. Or does it still need to be two compounds chosen between hard, medium, soft if it isn't qualified a wet race? Just wondering. So yeah, we had a wet start. And a crazy start. A really crazy start. And before I go on to that, yes, it was not done on purpose. Because what happened, in short, before I go to the long, our Mercedes took out basically two Red Bulls. Why I dare to say with full conviction it was not done premeditated? Because that same Mercedes with its bowling was nearly taking out Lewis Hamilton. So what happened? It was a script you could not write yourself. It was almost like a movie, but this time, yeah, I want to say the evil guys won, but there are no good guys here. So yeah, rainy start. Lewis from pole position had a magnificent start. For a rainy start, at least. A good start, let's put it that way. Had a good start. Valtteri Bottas had an abysmal start. Max Verstappen had a decent start. Sergio Perez had a decent start. And Lando Norris had an amazing start. All that, yeah, meant that Lewis was taking the lead, keeping the lead. Norris was overtaking Max Verstappen and Sergio on the other side. Were overtaking Bottas. They were on the outside, on the left-hand side, and Norris on the right-hand side, in front of Bottas, and Bottas made a mistake. He braked way too late while driving right behind Norris. You know that crash from Ricciardo and Max Verstappen, where Max Verstappen just went in front of Ricciardo, so he had no more downforce? It was kind of like that. I say kind of because in that crash, Max Verstappen shares a lot of the blame. In this case, Lando Norris shares zero of the blame. He was in front of Bottas for a long time, basically. At this point, Bottas knew was straight in front of him, stayed straight in front of him, and did nothing. And then he braked way too late. So he careened right into Lando Norris. Lando Norris almost taking out Lewis Hamilton. Slammed right into the side of Max Verstappen. More on that later. And, well, yeah, Bottas, his car was already broken down at that point, slammed right into Checo Perez. So with one Mercedes car taking out, well, I said take out, but almost taking out two Red Bull cars, the main competition. Checo Perez had to stop his car alongside the road because his engine was destroyed because of the impact. So there's another engine that will have problems, more on that later. And yeah, Max Verstappen managed to get to the pit, get some repairs done quickly. I believe new nose cone or new tires, I don't know, puncture. I forgot exactly, but because of that, he fell back from 9th. Yes, he fell back that far to 13th. And then the red flag came out. No, not just because of those two cars out, because there was another car out, Charles Leclerc. And the one fully to blame there is Lance Stroll. He made a judgment error. He went under the grass into the corner because he carried too much speed. Where have we heard that before? Oh, right, this race and the previous race. And he careened into Charles Leclerc. And Charles Leclerc flipped over. Not that way. Daniel Ricciardo. Luckily, Daniel Ricciardo was able to continue racing. But yeah, red flag, too much debris. And Max Verstappen driving with half a car. One of his barge boards was so far broken that after his pit stop back on track, it broke off completely. Under the red flag, they did their best to tape it off so nothing else breaks down any further. But yeah, carnage. Here's where I say where penalties do not do justice to the consequences. Maybe for Lance Stroll, but for Mercedes, no. Both of them get a 5 grid place penalty for the next start and 2 points on the licenses for basically taking out their competition. And that's where I say more on it later. Because of the crash in Silverstone, the engine of Max Verstappen was not well enough. And now Sergio Perez, his engine, is broken down as well, needs to be replaced. So that means both Red Bulls needs to take on new engines in their pool, which will cost them grid penalties, where not only they scored less or no points, or the other Mercedes drivers, their main competition. So yeah, that's a ruling where something needs to be looked at. And the same goes for one of my favorite drivers, and that is George Russell and Bottas crash. Things like that should be looked at for the problems, because it's not only a cash problem, it's also a penalty problem. My suggestion on that is, if you need to take on a new engine outside of your own fault, no grid penalty. Because scoring less or no points is penalty more than enough. Basically like a gearbox change if you do not finish. I know the rules are not like that. That's why I say they need to be reviewed. But if you think this was all, well, maybe of the carnage. Well, not of all the carnage. But more on that later, because that's all in the other carnage. So yeah, red flag, everybody back into the pits. So I want to talk a little bit about red flag and repairing. This time it was a little bit of luck for Max Verstappen, but still I say the repairing under red flag should be looked at. I don't mind tire changes. I don't mind bodywork patch up or taping off. I don't mind nose cone changing, but if you need anything changed, like a floor if possible, I don't think it's allowed, but for example, if that would have been allowed or possible, it would help Max Verstappen so much more. Or like Lewis Hamilton last time, his steering rod, I believe, not sure. If that's gonna be repaired under the red flag, it either should not be allowed. So in the case of Max Verstappen, taping it off and drive with half a car, or go back to the pack, to the back of the pack. Because normally when you need to repair something, you're going back, and if you have the best car, you can make it up. If you don't, you're not so far ahead anyway. And that way, yeah, if you have too much damage and you can repair it because of the red flag, you would normally be out of the race anyway. So in that regard, with the damage that Max Verstappen had this race, basically driving with half a car, and spoiler alert, he finished in the points. Yes, I say it in that way because it's unclear at this point if he gets 1 point or 2. But I'm fairly sure Max already has that 1 point, then those 2. Also more on that later. And that was not even all of the craziness, because, of course, after red flag comes a restart. Well, they all went out on inters, and the track had dried. The rain had stopped. So there was a lot of radio traffic, and George Russell like from, at this pace, everybody going into the pits. He was not far off. To be precise, he was only 1 number off. Of the 14 drivers left, if I'm saying that correctly, or 15 at that point. I think it's 15 at that point. Yeah, 15 drivers left at that point. 14 went into the pits, only 1 went to the starting grid. And that was Lewis Hamilton. He was the only one staying out on inters, so we had an 1 car grid start. It's so crazy. This is now, I forgot how many times I tried to record this, and luckily I now see that everything is recording well. Let's not jinx it. A 1 car start. Only the pole position was starting. That was crazy. Everybody else went into the pits, had to wait until the pit lights went on. Went green, I mean. So it was lights on, 1, 2, 3, 4, lights out, and Lewis was away, and the rest followed. And that was not even all of the craziness, because it went crazier. The first car to come out was George Russell. He was second at that point. And then a lot of problems. At least it showed. Because you saw George Russell falling back down the order. Because they have the last pit box, he didn't know where to line up. So he basically jumped everyone in the pits. In a way that was deemed not quite right. They was talk with the stewards, and they say, if you let everybody go back and go back to your position, that was, I believe, 7th, no harm, no foul. So he did that. So he went back to 7th, but Latifi was still 3rd. And then the most manly radio call ever. If you need to sacrifice me for Latifi, do it. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was willing to give up his race so that Latifi could get on the podium. Yeah, Williams and podiums. That's history for now. maybe next year. Yes, that was a kind of spoiler. So, yeah, with all that, crazy start, and in the pit lane, I believe it was Kimi Raikkonen who had an unsafe release, broke down the car of Nikita Mazepin. Broke the steering rod. And yeah, no red flag to repair it, so he was out as well. That means Sergio Perez was out, Charles Leclerc was out, Nikita was out, George Russell was out. That's 4. Who were out more? Norris? I don't know. I don't know all of them anymore. Were out. But yeah, it was lucky that Max could drive on with one of his bar boards missing. From third place with driving half a car. That means driving with a tractor. And he managed to get back into the points. 10th place as it stands now. Crazy driving. Well, not that kind of crazy driving. Crazy good driving. It was A-star material. Basically as bad as Bottas bottled it, that good Max Verstappen drove his car. Being the worst car on the grid at that point, going back to 10th, yeah, that's just amazing. That's really amazing. But yeah, that was not all the craziness either, because Lewis was sitting on the grid, starting on inters, where everybody was back on slicks. And the track was too dry for inters. Meaning, he went back into the pits to switch to slicks. And that means, because the pack was still close, he was dead last. He was dead last. At that point, it was first Esteban Ocon, second Sebastian Vettel, third Latifi. Insane to think those 3, well, for Vettel not that much, but that they were first and third for those 2. Insane. Sadly, small spoiler, Latifi could not hold on to his spot there. Not even close. But yeah, it was still an amazing race. And the race was only getting better, better, and better. Because Lewis from last, had to drive a recovery race basically. Sure, he had the best car on the grid at that point because, well, with one bargeboard missing, the Red Bull is no threat to a Mercedes in the slightest. So you imagine Lewis would drive back to first place with ease. No. After his 4th pit stop at that point, I believe, because he went from yellow, mediums to white, hard, and then again to mediums. He overtook most of the drivers until he was 6th and had to fight Alonso. You can say what you want to say. Alonso is a good driver. Lewis Hamilton is a good driver. But the Alpine is nothing compared to the Mercedes. So you would suspect, even though Fernando is a good driver, Lewis would take it rather easy on passing. Rather easy as in he would make it in a few laps tops. No. It took him more than 5. It took him way more than 5. About 10 laps wheel to wheel racing with Fernando Alonso in the lead. A few wheel banks, so he can do it. And he was not able to pass Fernando Alonso. So with this on slicks, it's very clear. Yes, having the best car helps, but you also need to be the driver. It was where Fernando made a slight braking error with about 5 laps to go that Lewis finally was able to pass Fernando. Sadly for Carlos Sainz, he was also able to pass him. But at that point, Esteban Ocon was still leading the race. I say still because after his pit stop, he temporarily gave away the lead to Fernando. So basically, after Lewis pitted his inters, Alpine has led the race. That means, yes, Esteban Ocon is a race winner. Esteban Ocon is a French Grand Prix winner for a French team in Hungary. So that was just bonkers, crazy. But it gets even better. He was fighting almost all the time, not as close as Fernando and Lewis were, with Sebastian Vettel on his heels. And I dare to say that Aston Martin is arguably a better car. Not in the way that the Mercedes is better than Alpine. But Esteban, according to the words of Sebastian Vettel, drove a faultless race. Just wow. A faultless race. Esteban Ocon, a Grand Prix winner. I never imagined I would say those words. Wow. Brilliant. That was just magnifique. And that all basically thanks to Fernando Alonso. How he held back Lewis Hamilton. He deserved driver of the day by far. And he won it by a landslide either. So, do I say that right? Well, anyway, he won it with a landslide. So, yes. Amazing racing. It was such heartwarming to see those two. And that was not even all. I mean, guess who got points? Williams. Latifi finished in 8th as it stands. Latifi 8th. Guess who was 9th? George Russell. George Russell finally points. In his interview, he was crying and it was such manly tears. Let's put it that way. It was, yeah, finally he has points. And he drove very well. Really. Yes. So this race, if I have to give it a number, a solid 9. Even though the crash was, let's put it that way. The race itself, in the end, a solid 9. I give it a solid 9. But there is some bad news. Sebastian Vettel, might get a disqualification. As stands, he is disqualified but not yet scrapped from the results because Aston Martin could not get out 1 liter as per rules. I know many would say, stupid rules, blah blah blah, but it's a clear cut. They need to give 1 liter to the FIA for testing that they don't cheat. And, well, 0.3 is not even close. Now, Aston Martin says there should be more than 1 liter in the system, so they're appealing the disqualification. But as it is now, if they can't get it out, Lewis Hamilton will slide up to second place and Carlos Sainz will be third. Which would mean that Carlos, if that happens, which is very likely at this point, will have his second podium where he was not on the podium. Which is a weird statistics. So yeah, we're heading up to the summer break. With a lot of bad luck, Max Verstappen had to give away his championship lead to Lewis Hamilton, who now leads with 8 points. And Mercedes took back the Constructors' Championship with 10 points, I believe. So yeah, they are still in a league of their own. It's close between those, but that's it. The number 3, Lando Norris, I believe, or is now Checo Perez, are still far behind. That they are basically not in contention unless Lewis Hamilton does not finish a lot of races. Let's put it that way. And, you know, it's already a shame that Max Verstappen had to not finish so many races as it stands out for something he could not even do, and being so far down because of his damaged car, which was not his fault either. I'm not gonna say Silverstone was completely blameless on his part, but yeah. I have the feeling this season will be very tense. I have the idea that the championship lead will switch more than a few times. Still, I mean, it will still switch a few more times. I don't know. I do not dare to say who will win this. I would not be surprised if it comes down to the wire to Abu Dhabi, and I would not even be surprised if the championship will be decided with 1 point in difference. I will not be surprised by that. And frankly, I hope it. Because for us spectators, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. So, yeah. A side note, I do want to say I found it very hypocritical for Lewis Hamilton, what he said over the radio with his fight with Fernando. It's really dangerous on those speeds. Yeah, then don't do dangerous stuff at high speeds that you shouldn't be doing, like Silverstone. But all that, his drive today, by far his best drive. And at the podium, you could see he was completely beaten up. More so than ever. He was even taken to the hospital. And that was not just because of the race. It's also because of the longer term effects of having COVID. At least that is what I have been told. And I believe it. So yeah, everybody who says it's just a cold, if one of the most fittest, healthiest guys in the world get long-term problems from it, it's not just a cold. It's not just a flu. If possible, please take the vaccine. Ask your doctor. Take it seriously. Because if Lewis Hampton can get longer term effects, I doubt many of us watching are at his health and level of how healthy we are. No. So yeah, let's start end on a happier note. Summer break, so we have to look forward for the second half of the season, which is already bonkers crazy good. And I think there will be more fireworks, if not literally, figuratively. So everybody, stay safe, take care, and see you at the next race. Bye bye.